Hello, and welcome to the Ground and Grow podcast. I am your host, Kayla Estenson Williams. This week has been pretty good over here in Minnesota. It's been really cold. We've had a couple sub-zero days. So I think we've kind of just been getting into like winter coziness. So we've been just chilling at home when it's really cold, getting cozy. Over winter break, my husband and I got back into playing Stardew Valley, which has been kind of fun. We played that so long ago, and we've been looking for a different game to play when we're just chilling, and so that's been fun. And as a bonus, I know everyone has different views on screen time for toddlers and all of that. We, try not to go excessive on it with our kiddo, but allowing it here and there so we can also relax and enjoy a little appropriate screen time for her too is good. And she loves watching Stardew Valley. Like, she's like, can we play the farm game? And she'll I think it's like, it's not children's educational content, but it's just about farming and animals and stuff. And it's like not fast moving screens and bright lights. And so if you are a parent and you're okay with a little screen time and you're looking for a video game to play while your kiddos are around, Stardew Valley might be a nice one to do. But yeah, just being cozy in the winter. I learned how to make, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last episode or not, but I learned how to make sourdough bread from my husband, who figured out how to make it last year, did all the research and the work to figure out how to do it right, but then has been, he's like not very consistent in actually making it. So this year I'm like, okay, teach me how to make it. I want to have sourdough bread more often. So we've been making that the last couple weeks, which has been fun. I've been doing my crochet project, which has been fun. So yeah, just staying warm and cozy inside. Today's a little bit warmer, so after work I'm hoping to get a little outside time in, just because it's going to get cold again. And yes, in Minnesota we say there's no horrible weather. It's just maybe you're not wearing enough warm clothes. But I'm also kind of a fair weather person. If it's above 10 or ideally 20 degrees, I'll go outside. That's fine. But when it's under 10 or obviously negative, I'm like, nope, I'm good. I don't need to go out. That's okay. So that's me. Obviously in our country, this past week from where I'm recording has been all of the LA fires, which has been really horrific to see people's homes and community really just being taken away. So that's really heartbreaking to see. And sometimes I have to have my own internal boundaries of not ruminating on it too much. I don't know if I have any listeners who are out in LA, but if you are, or if you have any loved ones affected by it, I'm sending some love and some care. I'm sure it's a really horrific time right now. So yeah, it's kind of the updates from the week. Some cozy, some hard. But yeah, let's get into it. I have a good Am I Overreacting Reddit post to share with a little psychoed on boundaries and how we can communicate and hold those boundaries. Lots of boundary stuff lately, which I think is going to be a lot of the stuff, and I think relates to obviously a lot of the work that we do in therapy, right? I think I'm talking about boundaries with clients all the time, and because that's how relationships work, and they affect our mental health and all of that stuff. So I have a Am I Overreacting Reddit post to share, and then we'll talk about it. So excuse me if I'm when I'm reading it, if I stumble across the words a little bit. There were a couple typos that I'm trying to make sure I don't get stuck on, but we'll see. So the title is My Time to See a Therapist Isn't Important to My Partner. I've dealt with depression in the past and currently deal with generalized anxiety disorder and a lot of stress from work. My partner and I have 2 small children. I've struggled to find a therapist that I like for the last 10 years. mostly due to changes in insurance or the therapist quitting from government programs I was eligible for. I set up a weekly time to see my current therapist virtually, and that was fine for the first few weeks. Now, of course, her partner, has enrolled the kids in extracurriculars that have to be done on the day and time of my session, and I have to be present to help handle both of them. Or there are social events he needs me to do on that day, so I have missed the last few weeks of sessions and have been relying on medication to help with anxiety. We are currently on vacation, and I was looking forward to, and then I had a small anxiety attack today. He, my partner, began to explain to me that in what I call absolutes, you always have anxiety, things are always frustrating for you, etc. Now we're silently fighting, and I'm quietly panicking because I hate being here like this. I feel like I have not felt like I feel like if I had not felt like I was socially pressured to give up my therapy these last few weeks, I may have had more progress before this trip, or at least felt more supported. Maybe I should just let it go. The thing is, even as I'm rescheduling my sessions, I know that something will come up where he will expect me to cancel. If my afflictions annoy him so much, why are the actions I'm taking to help it not important? Maybe I'm overreacting because I'm trapped in a hotel room with someone I'm fighting with for 2 days. Maybe I'll just take double medication until I get back to my shitty job on Monday and continue this dumb spiral that is life. So obviously, it sounds like this person is writing it in a place of like feeling really stuck. And it sounds to me like they're maybe a bit dysregulated in that moment. Sounds like, like they're going to some extremes for themselves too, right? Or like assuming things in extremes. So a lot of times when we are in a tough situation, our brain is going really fast, we're ruminating, we have racing thoughts, and we might interpret things in some all or nones, right? And sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not. And I'm guessing the truth is maybe somewhere in between here. But I think overall, right, like I wouldn't say this person is fully overreacting, right? Like I would be feeling frustrated too. Like, hey, this is the time that I had set aside for my therapy appointments. And it doesn't sound like you're respecting that, right? Like her partner isn't respecting and holding boundaries around that time. It sounds like there's also some really tough communication about mental health. It sounds like her partner is being pretty critical about how symptoms are showing up, and it sounds like it's getting kind of heated on this vacation that they're on. Maybe they're not communicating very effectively, and it's just kind of spiraling a little bit out of control, right? So I don't think they're overreacting and being frustrated about it. It's so valid to be frustrated about that. And it sounds like their own internal process on it might be a bit dysregulated in this moment, and kind of just feeling helpless. That's the feeling that I got at the end there of like, maybe I should just let it go. Nothing's ever going to improve, and I'll just like, I'm going back to this shitty existence, back to work and everything in the next week. So it sounds like there is some of this like hopeless, helpless, stuck feeling, which makes sense, right? You're already struggling with your mental health and you're having a hard time holding the boundaries around that time to get the help that you need and totally deserve. And so here, if I was working with this person in therapy, obviously I'd want some more information, right? So, it sounds like they had set aside this like recurring schedule with their therapist, which is great. So I'd be curious about how was that communicated with your partner? How are those boundaries communicated? Because it sounds like partner just scheduled extracurricular activities during that time. So I'd be curious, like, did they know like that was there, right? Is there some communication needed to really hold that boundary better? And what was the communication like after that? What are the different assumptions going on there, right? Because I'm guessing that there's some assumptions here, right? Maybe partner, I don't know, right? Maybe they weren't aware of what time those appointments were. Maybe they thought it would be easy to reschedule those therapy appointments, or, right, like maybe they are just being super disrespectful about the boundary of that time. right? But it sounds like what is needed is to slow that down and bring it back and really clearly communicate. This is the time that my therapy sessions are, and here is the boundary that I have with it. And so the psychoed that I'm coming into in this episode is how we can hold our boundaries, right? So first and foremost, obviously it's communicating that boundary. So in this situation, it's going to look like very clearly and specifically saying, this is the therapy appointment time that I have. And the boundary is, I'm not going to be doing any parenting duties during that time, right? Like, this is when you are on parenting duties. If you're going to plan any other activities, make sure they're ones that you can do on your own. Like, I'm not going to give up this therapy appointment time. This is for me, right? And there might be a little decision, like talking about it ahead of time to make sure it works kind of for the family, right? Like making sure it's at a good time where the other person is able to jump into the parenting duties in that moment so that you're both agreeing on a time that works good. But yeah, really prioritizing, this is my therapy time and I'm not moving it. And specifically communicating that boundary of, I am not going to give this up, right? Like, this is my time, unless there's some emergency, obviously, or like extenuating one-off circumstance, such as one kiddo needs to go to a doctor's appointment or something that might happen every like 6 months or something. So, it's not to say that it has to be totally 100% set in stone, but it might be, hey, unless there's a circumstance that's like totally out of the ordinary, and be specific on what those, like some of those examples might be, right? So it's not just going to be, oh, we signed the kids up for a new activity, so I've got to give up my time, right? It's more of a, this was something unexpected that we really couldn't plan around kind of thing. Those may be the moments that I will move around my therapy appointment, but this is my time, right? So we need to both do everything that we can to protect that time because it's important for my mental health, right? So communicate why that's important. And it sounds like there might be a need for some communication and maybe like making sure the partner understands how important that time is, making sure the partner is respectful and supportive of their mental health and what they're doing to take care of their mental health. Because that's important for everyone, right? Obviously, it's important for each person, right? Like, your own mental health is important first and foremost for you, but also it has like a positive effect on the family, right? When we take care of our mental health, we're going to communicate better. We're going to be a more effective partner, a more effective parent, all of those things. So, I mean, I'd even like add in like everyone in the family needs to take care of their mental health, because it sounds like partners communicating kind of ineffectively. So maybe they have some work they need to do. But yeah, it comes back to communicating, this is when my therapy appointment time is, and being very specific on how you're going to hold that boundary. So first you communicate it, but then you hold it, right? So I know this is tough and maybe complicated because it sounds like partner just made their own decision in signing kids up for extracurricular activities that maybe both parents were needed for. And I know, like, you don't want to disappoint the kids and being like, oh, we can't actually do that, right? Like, that's not going to work. But it really comes back to that would probably have been the moment to hold the boundary, right? So if partner says, oh, hey, I send the kids up for soccer and we both got to be there, then it's a time to hold that boundary. And so we're going to bring back that communication that we said before. It's like, oh, hey, that's when my therapy appointment time is. That's not going to work for me. I'm not going to be able to help out for that activity. Like I said earlier, if you're going to do any activities, it needs to not need me there, right? So I can help you brainstorm some solutions. Maybe there's another family member or someone who can help us out. Otherwise, we're going to have to switch and change the activity because this is my protective therapy appointment time. I'm not breaking that, and follow through with that. And like, that might not go smooth the first time, right? It might, especially if their communication is a little wonky right now, like it might result in some conflict, some stress, some tension. But what we do with boundaries is we are teaching people how to treat us. So we first communicate that boundary, Best case scenario, the other person hears it, respects it, supports it right off the bat. If we communicate that and then they don't respect it and support it, we uphold our boundary. And each time we are teaching them, you have to respect my boundaries, right? It's common and normal and totally okay for, like, in relationships, for there to be a few times where a new boundary is tough, right? Like maybe for this family, maybe that's kind of been the norm, right? Things that this person who's writing needs and expresses maybe aren't fully supported, or maybe the partner kind of assumes like, oh, you can move that around, it'll be fine. And so them kind of holding these new boundaries and being more firm about it might be new, and that might first feel complicated, right? It might be like, wait, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to you holding this boundary. And there might be a little bit more tension. The first time that happens, it doesn't mean that the relationship is ruined, right? I read through some of the responses there, and there were some extreme ones, right, of like your partner is being abusive or these horrible things or break up now. And maybe, right, like I don't know the full story, I don't know everything that's behind it, like maybe, but also maybe this is like an area for growth, right? Like maybe there's been some miscommunication and some not so great patterns around boundaries that are just like normal and show up in relationships. And this is an opportunity to change that, right? To say, here are my boundaries, I'm going to hold them up. And we might have a few times where we're kind of figuring out that groove, but the end goal is going to be, hey, I want us to get somewhere where you respect and support my boundaries, right? Now, if you're communicating this boundary and you're holding it, and your partner continues to disrespect it, continues to plan other things in that time, continues not to like fully hear or understand you, then that might be raising more of a red flag, right? And so that might be more of an opportunity for, okay, now we are doing a couples therapy session and we're going to work on this differently. Or maybe you need to take a step back and look at some different relationship things. Down the road, those, yeah, it might be time to explore like, hey, is this like a healthy partner for me? But it sounds like right now, based on this information, which I know there's like, I would, if I was this person's therapist, I'd be like, let's unpack it all. Let's look at this a little bit more. There's a lot more information to gather to get the full picture. But based on this limited information, my guess is that it is maybe around miscommunication on both parties. And it's like, okay, now's the time to be more clear and direct about communication, what those boundaries are, and holding those boundaries. And that's going to be a win for everyone, right? Making sure that there is time and space for someone to go to therapy and work on their mental health, again, is going to benefit them, which is important, and they deserve that. And it's going to benefit the whole family system, right? Like that change in one person in the system benefits the whole system. So that's my thoughts, right? I don't think this person is overreacting for being upset about it. And I'd be curious on, what is the communication like and how can you hold those boundaries, right? Because you deserve that time and space for your therapy appointments, and it is your job to uphold your boundaries if someone else doesn't support them. So if you're listening to this and you're like, ooh, like upholding those boundaries, like that's so tricky, and how do I do that? I have an episode earlier. I'll try to find it and link it in the description. It's like a ways back, but kind of on boundaries and how we can communicate those boundaries externally, but how we can hold our internal boundaries. So I have an episode on internal boundaries and how we can hold them. So those are like the things, whether we're communicating or not, like how we can really hold our boundaries. And I think that episode is full of good information that I share with clients all the time, because it is one of the more complicated parts of boundaries. So I talk about it more in depth in that episode. So if I'll try to find it and link it in the description. But I have, some previous episodes in previous years where I talk a little bit more about different types of boundaries, how we utilize them, kind of more of those skill-based episodes are back there. So that's there. And that will be it for this week's episode. If you are listening and enjoyed this episode or found it to be helpful, I so appreciate a rate and review. Like, it is super meaningful. I really like, I see it and I really appreciate it. It helps me grow this little podcast into maybe reaching a wider audience, which would be really lovely. So I appreciate any rates, reviews, or shares that you do. Otherwise, I hope you have a nice rest of your week, and I will look forward to talking to you all next week.